The author, Ursula Le Guin, once wrote a story about a young wizard who is pursued across the world by a nameless shadow, a terrifying being which he has accidentally unleashed through his own magic. Eventually, the young man stops fleeing and turns to face the demon, whereupon the shadow flees with the wizard now in pursuit. When he finally catches up to it, he calls it at last by its true name, which is the wizard's own name. The shadow he released into the world is his. In today's story from Genesis, Jacob also is beset by a shadowy figure. But unlike Le Guin's young wizard, Jacob does not name it. Instead, it names him. Who is the stranger in the dark, who struggles with Jacob so fiercely and so intimately? Jacob says it is God. Genesis does not quite resolve the question for us, though. Because the narrator refers to this visitor only as Ish, a word which means a man, or simply another. So is this other a manifestation of God? Or a manifestation of Jacob's unconscious? There is a sort of dreamlike quality to this encounter. As is often the case with dreams, it seems to begin without any actual beginning, and to unfold without any real passage of time. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. But if it is just a dream, how are we to account for Jacob's injury? I did have a friend who once broke his wrist sleepwalking, so I suppose that it is possible. Well, whatever the case, the entire story takes place in darkness, where things are hard to define. And the only thing we know for sure about this stranger is that he is impossible to pin down. You see what I did there? So Jacob is left alone, and another wrestles with him until daybreak. Neither can gain the upper hand. They are locked in an endless, grappling embrace, a contest of strength. The silent struggle grows so fierce that Jacob's hip is put out of joint. I actually spent last weekend with my cousin who had hip surgery, who would have something to say about how painful this must be. Jacob's hip is put out of joint, but even then there is no end in sight. And only after this long night are words spoken, when the stranger says, "Release me, for dawn is approaching." Is Jacob's opponent a demon, then? That would make sense. A shadowy figure that attacks at night but surrenders in the light of the day. Sounds like a vampire. But if it is a demon, how can we account for Jacob's reply? Who does Jacob take him to be that he responds by saying, "I will not let you go until you bless me"? The orthodox interpretation of this passage is that Jacob is indeed wrestling with God, or at least with God's angel. But if so, we might expect the outcome of the match to end in victory for God and surrender for Jacob, and that there are some preachers who have just decided to go there. But that is not what happens. The match is even. Neither can prevail. The struggle is finally resolved not by winning or losing, but by blessing and letting go. So let us return to the day before this night to remember where we are in this story. Jacob is on his way to the land of his birth, a place he fled some 20 years ago when his lifelong rivalry with his sibling was on the brink of becoming deadly. A long time has passed. Jacob is married twice to a pair of sisters, but we'll just skim over that. He now returns with children, servants, and livestock. But his only memory of his brother Esau is still that of a young man with murder in his eyes. And tomorrow he will see him again. And Jacob is afraid. Now you may remember that Jacob and his brother Esau were in fact twins. They shared the darkness of the womb, and even before they were born, their mother Rebekah could feel them wrestling inside her. Esau was delivered first, but Jacob followed close behind, his infant hands still clinging to his brother's heel. I will not let you go until you bless me. He's been chasing that blessing his whole life. As a boy, Jacob offered Esau a pot of stew in exchange for his birthright blessing. Later, Jacob tricks his dying father into bestowing on him a blessing that was intended for Esau. Now, in the darkness of night, on the eve of the brothers' reunion, Jacob finds himself reliving the pattern of the first relationship he ever knew, wrestling with an unseen other who shares the darkness with him. So is he wrestling with God or with his brother? Or both? After all, figures and dreams are like that. They can shift or blend identities. Maybe for Jacob, it is one and the same. Or as the Apostle John once asked, if you do not love your brother whom you have seen, how can you love God whom you have not? Reminded of a blessing from the pen of Irish poet John O'Donoghue. I bless the night that nourished my heart to set the ghosts of longing free. There are things that can only be known darkly in the night, like touch instead of sight, in the body instead of in the mind. There are longings that can only be faced in the language of dreams, and peace that can only be embraced after the struggle. So whoever or whatever it was that Jacob wrestled in the night, man or angel, waking or dreaming, somehow it prepares Jacob to rise in the morning, broken and blessed, and cross the river to find his brother and ask his forgiveness, and say again, I will not let you go until you bless me.